Welcome everyone. Before I start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you get all our new summaries. And let's begin our film. The story begins with Woo Sung. Woo Sung was training in the middle of a large field, and there was a little kid who kept bothering him and teasing him with ice cream because the weather was hot. But suddenly, a wealthy businessman appeared, with criminals chasing him, wanting to rob him. Woo Sung got extremely angry because they bumped into the kid and made him drop his ice cream. So, he went after the criminals and started fighting them. And here we learn that Woo Sung has been training in martial arts his entire life. Not to mention, he was wearing iron shoes, weighing 25 kilos to break everything in his path. He also knows a fast fighting style called the Iron Foot technique, and he delivers devastating kicks faster than lightning. He was indeed able to easily defeat the criminals. In the end, the businessman tried to pay him money for saving him, but he refused and continued on his way because he had avenged the kid for the ice cream that fell on the ground. As soon as Woo Sung returned to the field, he was surprised by many cars surrounding him from all directions. He got ready to fight again. And then came Jiang. Jiang had trained in martial arts with Woo Sung when they were young, but he stopped training and became a wealthy businessman. Of course, the two greeted each other happily because they were meeting for the first time in a long time. Jiang invited Woo Sung and started reminiscing with him about their training days, saying they were like brothers. After that, Woo Sung finished eating and began training his secret technique for strengthening nerves and endurance. As for Jiang, he watched him and felt jealous. And here we learn that back in the day, the master had thrown Jiang out onto the streets because of his weakness and trained Woo Sung instead because he had willpower and determination. The next morning, Jiang took Woo Sung with him to the company he works for. Jiang's company trains the world's strongest bodyguards and hires them out to rich people to protect them from danger. By chance, we learn that the businessman Woo Sung, saved from the criminals, is the owner of this company. The businessman's name is Lee, and he chose Woo Sung from among dozens of strong fighters to protect his daughter. Jiang said he would talk to him and ask if he wanted the job or not. Indeed, Jiang talked to Woo Sung and told him that Lee wanted him to be his daughter's bodyguard for a huge sum of money. Woo Sung agreed because he was unemployed and living on the streets. Lee and Woo Sung were in the car. Lee thanked him for saving him and asked him to protect his daughter, Mei, from danger because she was reckless and might hurt herself. Woo Sung told him, "Don't worry, I'll sacrifice my life for her." At that time, Mei, the businessman's daughter, was at a nightclub where some guys harassed her and tried to kidnap her. Of course, Mei tried to resist them, but it was useless. Fortunately, Lee and Woo Sung were looking for her, and when Woo Sung noticed the criminals, he grabbed them and beat them all and saved Mei from them. Afterwards, her father took her home to tend to her wounds. The next day, Mei woke up and was surprised to find Woo Sung in her house, watching her all the time. She offered him a large sum of money to leave her alone, but Woo Sung refused, saying he had made a promise to her father to protect her from danger, no matter the cost. Of course, Mei was annoyed with him and kept treating him disrespectfully, hoping he would leave her alone. One day, she went out for a stroll, and Woo Sung was with her. By chance, they encountered a group of thugs harassing girls in the street. Mei slapped their leader, thinking Woo Sung would defend her, but he left her on her own and let the thugs chase her. In the end, Mei apologized to Woo Sung for treating him disrespectfully and begged him to help her. Woo Sung grabbed the thug leader and hung him in the air to teach him manners. Unfortunately, Woo Sung was watching Mei day and night, even while sleeping, to the point that he got into a fight with a waitress at a restaurant because she served Mei an expired drink. Of course, Mei was upset with Woo Sung for being obsessed with protecting her and ruining her life. Woo Sung picked her up and decided to take her home against her will, but she slipped from his grasp and fell to the ground, crying and cursing him. Then, without warning, 3 criminals surrounded him to distract him, and a 4th criminal kidnapped Mei in a truck and fled. Woo Sung realized they had been watching them for hours and had fallen into a terrible trap. First, Woo Sung grabbed the 3 criminals and beat them. Then, he shot off like lightning, managing to reach the truck where Mei was kidnapped and clung to its roof. No matter how hard the criminals tried to throw him off, they failed because his grip was so strong. Finally, Woo Sung jumped off the truck himself and circled back to block their path. The driver tried to run him over, but Woo Sung used his iron shoes to smash the car's windshield. Afterwards, he destroyed everything in his way until he finally rescued Mei and ran home with her. The criminals fled like dogs when they heard the police sirens. At night, Mei was amazed and couldn't understand why the criminals wanted to kidnap her. Woo Sung said that her father was a very powerful businessman with enemies everywhere, so she had to be careful and watch out for herself. Mei thanked him for saving her from the kidnapping. After Mei went to sleep, Wusong sat reflecting and remembering the old days. Here we learn that the master and Kang Li had found him abandoned by a tree, with no knowledge of where his parents were. So the master took him in to train him alongside Kang Li. They both trained together as children, enduring the toughest and most severe exercises. However, in the end, the master chose him to inherit the devastating Iron Foot technique. From that time on, he has been training to preserve this legendary art and make his master proud of him. The next day, Wusong went to talk to Kang Li and informed him about what had happened, telling him that Mi had almost been kidnapped. But in the middle of their conversation, Kang Li asked Wusong to teach the Iron Foot technique to all the bodyguards in the company, in exchange for an astronomical sum of money. Wusong refused, saying it was a secret he had inherited from the master and he would never reveal it to anyone. Kang Li then showed his jealousy and challenged Wusong to a fight to prove he was stronger. At first, they were evenly matched, and then Kang Li began to dominate because Wusong wasn't using the Iron Foot technique and was fighting with just his hands. In the end, Wusong got angry, grabbed Kang Li, beat him severely, and landed a powerful kick that nearly knocked him unconscious. Kang Li told him, "You are no longer my friend. From today, you are my sworn enemy," and left him. Afterwards, he met the gang of criminals who had kidnapped Mi, and here we learn that Kang Li was the one who planned her kidnapping from the beginning in order to threaten her father, the businessman, and take full control of his company. Meanwhile, Wusong and Mi traveled out of the city to a seaside beach to stay out of sight. There, Mi began to trust Wusong and no longer hated him like before. Not only that, but they became dear friends and spent an enjoyable time together. As for the vile Kang Li, he deceived the businessman Li, kidnapped him, and handed him over to the head of the criminal gang so they could force him to sell his company to them. But he refused. So, they threatened to kidnap his daughter Mi and end her life. Wusong stood alone on the shore, reminiscing about the old days and his promise to the businessman to protect Mi from all dangers. He also remembered his master's warning, who told him that the Iron Foot technique would cause him trouble because many people would try to steal it. At night, in the darkness, a large group of criminals attacked Wusong and Mi. There were so many that his focus was scattered and Mi was taken from him. However, he defeated the criminals in seconds and rushed to save her as quickly as possible. Eventually, Wusong arrived at a huge facility and moved with extreme caution, but he was caught off guard and fell into a trap. An iron chain was tied around his leg, and then highly professional special forces fighters began lunging at Wusong from every direction. These fighters were extremely skilled because they worked for Kang Li, who had trained them. Wusong was shocked by them and tried to defend himself, but it was useless because his leg was chained, preventing him from using the Iron Foot technique. Among these fighters was a man who used the bullhead technique, destroying everything in his path, and a girl highly skilled with knives, unmatched in her expertise. But the most dangerous fighter was an enormously strong giant of a man. Moreover, one of the criminals tightened the chain around Wusong's leg, immobilizing him completely so he couldn't move. Then the massive fighter struck him unexpectedly on the head, knocking him unconscious. Thus, Wusong lost the battle, and Mi was kidnapped, becoming a hostage in the hands of Kang Li and his gang. After the fight, Wusong was dragged across the ground in the rain until they reached a large pit. There, Kang Li appeared, as he had orchestrated this plan from the beginning. But before he could order his followers to bury Wusong in the pit, he remembered their training days together and started crying. However, in the end, he regained control of his emotions, pushed Wusong into the pit himself, and coldly and mercilessly ordered the criminals to bury him. Mi kept crying for him bitterly, but it was useless. Hours after Wusong was buried, the storm continued, and thunder filled the sky. Then, something unexpected happened. Wusong managed to dig his way out from underground and emerged again, covered in mud. But his goal was only one thing: revenge against Kang Li for what he had done and rescuing Mi from kidnapping, to fulfill his promise to her father. As soon as Wusong returned home, he searched the businessman's office and found a strange-looking CD. When he played it, he discovered a video of the businessman, talking about his enemies. Wusong learned who the gang was that helped Kang Li kidnap Mi. Afterwards, he broke the iron shoe for the first time in many years. He also cut his hair and prepared himself for the final battle. The next day, Wusong stormed the bodyguard company where Kang Li worked, bypassing the alarm system without trying to avoid it. However, he was surprised by dozens of fighters standing in his way, determined to finish him off. Indeed, the fight between Wusong and them began. But at first, we noticed something strange. Wusong was moving at lightning speed because he had taken off the iron shoes and become very light. No matter how hard the fighters tried to overpower him, they couldn't, because he would grab anyone who came near him and strike them with tremendous force and incredible incredible speed. Additionally, he had invented a new fighting style he called the tornado foot, delivering consecutive powerful kicks to push everyone away and dominate the battlefield. Wusong grabbed his enemies and defeated them all without tiring. So, they decided to use iron shields to defend themselves and try to control him, but it was useless. Wusong kept striking them. Then, Wusong noticed he had entered an iron cage and was about to fall into a terrible trap. So he used his full power and destroyed everything in his path to avoid being cornered and losing the fight. In the end, Wusong knocked everyone unconscious and laid them out on the ground. After that, he defeated the samurai fighter guarding the door and used his fingerprint to enter the secret room. As soon as Wusong entered the room, he was surprised by the professional fighters who had defeated him before, but this time, he was ready for them and began the fight. Of course, the fighters attacked him without hesitation and with tremendous ferocity, but Wusong overpowered them thanks to the new fighting style he had invented, and because he had become fast after removing the iron shoes. In the end, Wusong achieved his revenge and eliminated them all without any trouble and with ease, and continued on his way to settle the score with Kang Li and rescue Mi. Indeed, Wusong reached the main room of the building, and there he found Mi and her father, the businessman, held captive inside a cage. But suddenly, the gang leader who had helped Kang Li appeared. The gang leader's name was Master Feng, and he was the one who had agreed with Kang Li to steal the businessman's company. Wusong told him it was time to face punishment for the crimes he had committed. Feng was about to shoot Wusong, but Kang Li stopped the bullet with his iron gauntlet and said he had to defeat Wusong in a fight himself to prove his strength to everyone, and that he couldn't kill him with a contemptible gun. Indeed, Kang Li challenged Wusong using the iron gauntlet he had crafted. Kang Li discovered the Iron Fist technique after studying Wusong's fights for many years and learned all its secrets. At the beginning of the battle, Kang Li was able to easily dominate Wusong due to the destructive power of his grip. But over time, Wusong fought back because he was faster and more skilled, and he began to resist in order to rescue Mi and her father. The fight between the two was legendary, to the point that the walls were destroyed and couldn't withstand the blows. However, in the end, Wusong waited for the right opportunity, evaded Kang Li's attacks, and then landed a counter kick to his ribs, breaking them. He then took advantage of his extreme weakness and broke his leg as well. As a result, Kang Li was crippled and unable to move. At that moment, Master Feng shot him with a gun because he had become weak and useless. Of course, Wusong was shocked and rushed to check on his friend, with whom he had trained since childhood. Kang Li said he had always wanted to please his master and inherit the Iron Foot technique, but he failed. He asked Wusong to avenge him against Feng, and then took his last breath. Wusong was filled with rage and tried to attack Feng, but one of the criminals shot him, and he fell to the ground. Mi was shocked and couldn't believe Wusong was dead, but suddenly, Wusong gathered his strength again, rose, and struck the criminal a fatal blow. Then, he stood before Feng and told him it was time to pay for the crimes he had committed. Of course, Feng was terrified and begged him to let him live, but it was useless. Wusong finished him without mercy and freed Mi and her father from captivity. After completing his mission, Wusong went to the mountains, to the same place where his master had trained him long ago. There, he buried his friend Kang Li beside their master in new sorrow.
And that concludes today's film. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for the next summary. Goodbye!